Gangs of London is a 2020 action crime drama co-created by Gareth Evans, director of The Raid and The Raid 2, and starring Joe Cole, Michelle Fairley, Lucian Masmati and Cole Meany. It follows the gang world of London being torn apart by turbulent power struggles and a vacuum created when the head of the city's most powerful crime family is assassinated by unknown assailants. I reviewed the first episode separately a few days ago because it was 1.5 hours long. It was quite interesting, and I thought this would be a good series to check out. Now I've seen the entire thing, and to summarise my thoughts on the series, I thought it was brilliant, really very good, 5-star entertainment. I'm not really the best person to judge how good a TV series is. I haven't seen many. I'm more of a movie man. I've been watching a few of the big ones. I've seen The Sopranos, Game of Thrones, Boardwalk Empire, Taboo, but this is, really up there. I thought they did a really good job. It actually reminds me of Game of Thrones in a way, with all the political backstabbing, betrayals, brooding melodrama, ladder climbing and power struggles, only transported to the modern day city of London. The title is a bit of a weird one, because it's quite generic, isn't it? It sounds unoriginal and cliché. Gangs of New York, Gangs of Wasseypur, Gangs of London. If I saw this title when flicking through the TV, I probably wouldn't think twice. Also, I don't know about you, but when someone says the phrase Gangs of London, I get images in my head of moped thugs and teenage chavs wrestling a handbag out of an old woman's grip. But Gangs of London really isn't interested in that London street gang culture at all. In fact, for a show with London in the title, it is shockingly very international and deals with all sorts from the Turkish Kurdistan conflict, high-level corporate and political corruption, Nigerian gangsters, tax havens, secret societies and underground worlds where the rules we follow in life don't apply. It starts off quite low-key and typical when it comes to squabbling gangsters arguing over money and territories and all that kind of stuff. And by the time the credits roll up for the final episode, I wouldn't blame you if you thought you'd just stumbled onto some international espionage superhero mystery. Season 2 would be very different to the first, I imagine. I was quite taken aback by how corporate and high up the ladder the criminals in the show are, but I suppose it makes sense. There are 2 Londons, by the way, for those who don't know. What we think of as London is called Greater London, but there's something called the City of London, which is about a 2 square mile area which contains the city's business district. And a lot of people don't know that it actually has its own government, its own mayor, and even its own independent police force. That's one of the reasons why some of the elements of the show that I felt at first were a bit too outlandish, that people might think are a bit too over the top, made a bit more sense once I went over them in my head. We follow the shooting of gangster Finn Wallace by 2 young guys from a traveller site who were under the impression they were being paid to murder some random pedo. Finn's son, Sean Wallace, swears vengeance, and until he has an idea who ordered the hit, he stops all trade with his business partners, which escalates tensions that are already sky high, not only between the other crews but his own crime family. Like literally in a meeting with all of the other criminal business partners, in which Finn's partner Ed, who grew up with Finn, and his son Alex are discussing how things are going to play out for the next couple of weeks in the aftermath of Finn's death. Sean storms into the meeting and declares that all business is off until he finds his father's killer, and wants everyone to look for the perpetrators. We all know that you don't air your dirty laundry in public, and Sean going against his own family members in a meeting where everyone is watching is not good news. Naturally, the sharks have sensed weakness, and they've tasted blood. Some of these other gangsters are no doubt going to want to cement themselves in the vacuum left by Finn's murder. Meanwhile, there's also an undercover cop who infiltrates the Wallace family, looking to gain Sean's trust and take him down whilst not exposing himself. That's really the foundation of the story, and the series covers each base over the course of the 9 episodes in terms of telling us who each character is in this massive tangled web, what their relationship is with each other, and why they do what they've done. Even the 2 gypsy shooters, for example, who we're told wanted money to leave their traveller site and make a new life for themselves. The story expands and goes to all sorts of places from there, and it leaves ample room in the plot for some cool beatdowns and shootouts. It isn't perfect. There were a few things I found a little iffy and contrived with the story. The undercover cop, for example, has some rock-solid plot armor, and is able to work his way up the Wallace family and into Sean's inner circle laughably fast, as is the case with many movies, but here they had about 9 hours to play with, so they could have done it a little bit more believable. In typical underground movie cop fashion, he takes a bullet for the head of the family, which wins his trust. But I thought to myself, there are numerous members of your entourage who have not only taken a bullet for you, but have died for you, and I don't see you having Sunday roast with any of them. There was one part also where the cop gets found out by one of the bodyguards, and conveniently, the bodyguard gets shot dead in the next scene in an unrelated attack. And not only that, but the guy who found out goes to the head of the family and is about to tell him, literally saying before getting cut off by Sean, who's got more immediate issues to worry about. Like, what's more important than a cop in your inner circle? And it literally takes seconds to just say, I just found out your man is a cop, but don't worry, I've got him trapped in my car. Let's go deal with this first. But I am nitpicking here, to be honest. There are a few moments like that, contrived situations that take you out of what is otherwise a show that presents itself as quite realistic and grounded, despite some absurd and crazy stuff happening in the plot. But those moments are far and few between. Overall, the story is really interesting, and the show manages to juggle a vast amount of characters very well, with some great acting, I might add, even from actors who only have a few minutes of screen time, like the guy who played the teenage Sean in the flashback scene. The characters are great, and whilst few are sympathetic, you can see where everyone is coming from in a weird way. You can see everyone's point of view. In a show where characters torture each other in excruciating methods that I've never seen on screen before, it's weird to say, but it's true that there's no moustache twirling bad guys. Everyone really has a reason for doing what they do. And because of that, rather than some characters feeling disparately more evil than others, the result of a combination of the show's strong acting and competent character building is that the world that these people operate in itself feels cruel and dog eat dog. I swear down, it's like the show goes out of its way to tell you that this is not a very nice place we live in, this earth of ours, and the people with the power to make a difference really don't want to. I was quite impressed with the development of Sean Wallace. He starts off as a young guy thrust into the position occupied by his father, a man who built an empire, and he's a hothead who's emotional and mentally unstable as a result of his father's shooting. But where his character goes is not what I expected, and that's true for many of the show's characters. That's not to say the show reinvents the wheel. Truth be told, the story is relatively by the numbers, but not every show has to deliver something new. As long as it does what it does well, I'm happy, and for the most part, Gangs of London does so. As well as juggling numerous characters, one thing I felt the show was quite adept at was merging genres in a way. At its core, it's a family gangster drama, but at times it becomes an ultra-violent action series, and there's a few scenes that are so sadistic they borderline on torture porn horror, and it is really gory, cringe-inducingly so. Yeah, sure, loads of stuff out there are way more violent, but one of the reasons why the violence is so effective in this show is because of the acting. You can really see the fear in the eyes of the victims, sometimes in the eyes of the perpetrators too, and that is what makes these kinds of scenes so memorable. The action, by the way, was really, really good. The 2 episodes directed by Evans in particular, episode 1 and 5, had some brilliant action scenes, a combination of gory hand-to-hand and knife combat, a la The Raid, to quench the thirst of action movie junkies who watch the series in the hope of seeing something in the vein of what Evans is known for. But some of the gun battles I thought were really well done. I know this sounds weird, but there's an art to getting gun violence right in film and TV shows. When they do hit the mark, often the shootouts can come off as operatic dances, a feast for the senses and a cathartic release. It's usually a combination of the editing, the sound design of the gunshots, the guns being cocked and the splatter noise as bullets pierce flesh, or the crunching sound of a shotgun blast taking out a concrete wall. There are certain boxes that need to be ticked, like authentic looking muzzle flash and realistic blood effects, and when it all comes together, the result is a shootout that, in spite of the horrific violence, is ultimately a satisfying experience. And that's what I felt these shootouts in Gangs of London delivered. They were satisfying, like the assault on the gypsy camp and the frenzied skirmish in the Welsh home. And the gore just added to it immensely. The way you see bodies ripped apart in the middle of explosive gunfire was great, and you can't tell what's practical and what's CGI, which is a great trait of an action scene in of itself. Overall, I was surprised by the quality of this show and found it impressive. As long as you're not squeamish, there's a little bit of something for everyone. And unless you're the kind of person who watches films and shows with a notepad, noting down plot holes and things that are implausible, I think you'll find it entertaining. It wraps things up nicely too at the end, but leaves ample room for further installments. And if future seasons are anything like this one, I'll definitely be on the lookout. Thanks for watching.